Dr. Kemi for Kemi Talks Media. It's Monday, the 19th of May, 2025. Let's talk about President Biden, the former president of the United States, and the cancer diagnosis that I broke about 8 hours ago. When this story broke, it was just like shocking to hear that President Biden had been diagnosed of stage 4 cancer, which has metastasized to the bone. Now, being a pharmacist for 37 years, I'm retired now. I can tell you that when you have metastasis, it's a word that denotes that the cancer has spread so far that it may never be treated well, and the person is likely to die. The metastasizing to the bone could be a very hard thing. First, I've always had respect for President Biden. Why? He was my senator when I lived in Delaware. I was 19 years old, and now I'm going to be 61. I've seen Biden serve this nation for close to 50 years. When Biden was a young senator, in fact, he was sworn in the hospital next to his little boys. The man has seen tragedy. His wife and his daughter died in that car crash, and the children, left with him were his boys. He was right beside them in the hospital, surviving, and he was sworn in that hospital as senator. He has served this country. And at the end of the day, former President Biden has always been that senator that cared. Then he ran alongside President Obama as vice president, then he became president. Some of the tweets I'm reading this morning are so shocking. Some of these tweets have gone across party lines. Some of them have become very vile, but it's not really important. What's important now is that he has a good quality of life and he's at least, happy. Now, let's get to the White House. The White House sent a statement out, okay, and it was in form of a tweet from Donald Trump's Truth Social, where he says Melania and I are saddened to hear about Joe Biden's recent medical diagnosis. President Trump didn't say what it was. It just says his recent medical diagnosis. We extend our warmest and best wishes to Jill and the family, and we wish Joe a fast and successful recovery. I think that's a good thing coming from President Trump, on this diagnosis. And if President Trump can write that, I don't know why other, conservatives and their supporters are going crazy online. It's not a political subject. Okay. Now, my father was diagnosed of prostate cancer 20 years ago, and he was getting treated, but towards the end of his life, as you know, my dad died on April 6th, he became elderly. He had a stroke in 2021, 2022, and at the end of the day, in Africa, we'll say, oh, they died of old age. My father had that prostate cancer. But I didn't know exactly the diagnosis of how it moved around his body, but he was getting treated and he was being stable. And, I took care of him part of that, 2014 to 2017 era. But okay, so Camela Harris. Camela Harris was the vice president of the United States alongside Joe Biden. She tweeted, Doug and I are saddened to learn of President Biden's prostate cancer diagnosis. We are keeping him, Dr. Biden, that's the wife, Jill Biden, and their entire family in our hearts and prayers during this time. Joe's a fighter, and I know he'll face this challenge with the same strength, resilience, and optimism that have always defined his life and leadership. We're hopeful for a full and speedy recovery. Now, when you look at what Kamala wrote here and see what some of the conservative supporters are writing, they're saying that it's a lie, that they knew of this before. And regardless if they knew, like, Is President Biden the first person to hide a health condition like this? I guess they're going after him because of what the White House doctor wrote. Well, let's go on. The Obamas, Michelle and I. You can see it's like everybody and I, Melania and I, Michelle. So, I mean, not to be funny or anything, but this is how it is with social media. Everybody comes and writes their own thing. So Obama writes, Michelle and I are thinking of the entire Biden family. Nobody has done more to find breakthrough treatments for cancer in all of its form, and I'm certain he will fight this challenge with his trademark resolve and grace. We pray for a fast and full recovery. Now, guys, if you remember very well, when President Biden was running for President of the United States, his second term, at one point, the top Democratic leaders and former presidents had a meeting about his health last year. Should he run? Is he healthy to run? And during that time, Mr. Trump was campaigning and mocking Joe just about everywhere, Sleepy Joe, all the different things. At the end of the day, let's look at it this way. Why didn't he run for his second term? Was that ever announced, the real reason? They just told us health reasons. So according to all these conservative people who are blasting the fact that they lied, this must have been the diagnosis last year that prevented him from running for office again. So President Obama wrote this, and the Canadians. This is the former Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, who did a lot of work in Biden's last 4 years, a lot of work for Canada and stuff. So he tweeted, Joe, I'm thinking about you and Jill today. You've always been a fighter, my friend. I'm praying for your full and speedy recovery. Thank you for continuing to inspire us all. We haven't heard from the new Prime Minister yet, but I guess they'll do that today. President Clinton. Former President Clinton said, my friend Joe Biden's always been a fighter. Hillary and I are rooting for him and are keeping him chill and the entire family in our thoughts. Now, President Clinton isn't having it with social media. He doesn't open his comments. So you can see only people that's, he doesn't want the rhetoric. He's old too. Okay, Hillary now tweets, I'm thinking of the Bidens as they take on cancer, a disease they've done so much to try to spare other families from. Wishing you a speedy full recovery. Now, we all know that President Biden has done so much for cancer research and all. Same thing, Hillary didn't open her comments. Secretary Marco Rubio, a Republican who is now the Secretary of State, said, Jeanette and I are united in prayer for the Biden family during this difficult time. So all the wives and them, they're all rooting for Biden. Now this one gets controversial. Donald Trump Jr. tweeted this. And I think this is why a lot of the conservative supporters have really got down on, this whole thing. Considering what his father wrote, Donald Trump Jr. said, what I want to know is how did Dr. Jill Biden miss stage 5 metastatic cancer, or is this yet another cover-up? Okay, that's because he's responding to the tweet by Dr. Stephen Quay. Prostate cancer is the easiest to diagnose when it starts, and watch it progress to bone. And to watch it progress to bone metastasis, the PSA blood test shows the rate of cancer. So what Quay wrote is correct from a doctor. But Donald Trump Jr. was mocked all over the internet because there is no stage 5 metastasis cancer. It's really stage 4 it ends in. And a lot called him not compassionate, cover up. All this stuff is not necessary at this time. And this is the letter, for the spokesperson Karen Jean-Pierre, assistant to the president at White House, from Dr. Kevin O'Connor, the president's doctor. And you can see O'Connor, if you read that letter, it basically says the president was fine. So which means there was actually a cover up and they lied. Anyway, good luck to President Biden. I hope he does well.